Welcome to Desperately Seeking the 80s. I am Meg.
And I am Jessica. And Meg and I have been friends since 1982. We got through middle school and high school together here in New York City, where we still live.
And where we podcast about New York City in the 80s. I do Ripped from the Headlines.
And I do pop culture.
So we're recording in the morning, which is unusual for us.
And we don't like it at all.
It's fine. Would I rather have slept in today on a Saturday morning? Yes, I would have. But it's fine. We're making it work. And I'm excited about my story.
I'm excited as well. And I think that at least part of my story will make you laugh very hard.
Awesome.
Yes.
Looking forward to that.
Awesome.
My engagement question, Jessica. Unlike a lot of New Yorkers, neither of us have country homes.
A lot of New Yorkers of a particular social echelon agreed.
Okay, but we don't.
We do not.
Now, if you did have a country home, I want you to tell me about your, dream country home. What would be the perfect place for Jessica?
No ticks. So I guess
it?
Well, that's number one.
Okay.
I'm very tick phobic.
Dream. I want you to
Don't you? Isn't it sad? That's me dreaming
yes.
big. That's me dreaming big. No disease. No bug carried diseases.
Take it a little bit further. Where?
Okay, where?
What size?
Okay, I'm thinking. I would like something where the size would be I could sleep 8 people.
Ooh.
And
a pool?
I would definitely like a pool and a beach.
Okay.
Yeah. I used to think I wanted to be in the woods, but with my newfound tick anxiety.
Okay.
So my parents used to have a place in Washington, Connecticut that was possibly the most beautiful house I've ever seen, which they then promptly sold. But it was this giant, giant house with a lawn that was a croquet lawn and a pool. And it was just lovely and beautiful. And that has been my dream house for such a long time. But now I'm afraid of grass. So yes, I would like a house that sleeps 8 people, that's old, but not so old that the foundation and the roof are now going to come off.
So like a cottage? Okay, are we talking Hamptons?
No,
beach?
I hate the Hamptons. Some beach. I don't know. A beach somewhere.
Okay.
I'm not very good at dreaming in the morning.
I guess not.
I can't dream big. All I can think of is where's the coffee that I never drank today? And I'm just sitting here like I'm trying, but something in the beach that's not the Hamptons, but also has a pool and is really beautiful and, not with people who are in East Hampton lining up to get a $9,000 BLT at Cinderella.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to say what my sources are because it'll give it away. And this is definitely a story that you're just going to have to hang in there and then you'll figure it out.
You know what, my love? Where am I going? Here I am. Lay it on me.
I don't want you to think oh, I know exactly what she's going to talk about because you probably won't know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's okay.
I am delighted to make all efforts to be silent. I'm going to say nothing.
I'm not saying that.
I don't think you are. Okay. I'm saying I'm going to control myself and I'm going to engage in the most appropriate way.
Okay, I will say 2 of my sources that don't give it away are Harper's Bazaar and Real Estate Weekly.
Oh, which we both read so frequently. Okay, yes. I'm totes in.
In 1980, 23-year-old Debrah Charatan opened a commercial real estate company in New York City called Bosch Realty, Incorporated. Pretty impressive for a daughter of German Holocaust refugees who grew up working class in Howard Beach. She was a smart and scrappy kid. When she was 14, she worked 40 hours a week at a local bakery which she managed to squeeze in around her school schedule.
Get out of town.
When she was 15, the owner of the bakery put her in charge of all the other high school kids who worked there. When she graduated from high school, she immediately got into the real estate game, managing apartments while going to night school at Baruch.
I mean, I'm impressed.
I know. She's a hustler.
I was just getting high. She's doing real things.
Debrah.
Incredible, Debrah.
Making it work. When she was 23, she borrowed $2,000, rented an 8-by-10-foot basement office, and started cold calling building owners to see if they wanted to sell.
Who is this kid?
So she just got a bunch of phone numbers, probably went through the yellow pages and just called people and said, "Do you want to sell your building?"
Got nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
Go for it.
Hundreds of calls later, the owner of a 100,000 square foot loft building said, "Yes, I do." All right, so she's got a client. She ran a 3-line classified ad in the Times saying, "Anybody want a 100,000 square foot loft building?" And then people called in saying, "Kind of, maybe." She treated every single call as a potential client. So she asked each one of the people who called to describe exactly what they were looking for. So she made more clients that way.
This is a smart kid.
I know. You got to be impressed,
I
right?
am impressed.
Then she tracked down their dream space and tried to convince the owner of that dream space to sell. So, nobody's sitting around going "I want to sell my building," but she's like, "Maybe you do."
I love her.
I know. Bosch Realty was off to the races, and she had another gimmick. She only hired women real estate agents.
Nicely done, Debrah.
She loved the press she got for this. There were puff pieces in Harper's Bazaar and Real Estate Weekly. There were an occasional article that would cast her as calculating and somewhat unpleasant, but she didn't care. There's no such thing as bad press to Debrah. One article titled "Money Dearest,"
oh, rude,
portrayed her as particularly unappealing, but she loved it. She made sure she got a bunch of hard copies from the publisher. She went and bought the hard copies from the people who published that article. Because that's what you used to do.
Yeah.
So she just got a stack.
In the movies when they're like, "Oh my God, no one can see this terrible article about me. I'm going to go to the newsstand and buy all the copies."
Well, she bought them so she could give them away to people.
Which is why she's a genius.
The women real estate agents she hired were young, attractive, and for many, it was their first job. Debrah liked to mold these women, teach them the ropes. In the male-dominated field of commercial real estate, she wanted her agents to have an edge. Hygiene was paramount. She would have weekly smell tests.
Okay, now I'm in. I'm in.
When the agents would line up in her office, raise their arms, and she would walk down the line smelling their pits. If someone didn't pass the smell test, they were sent home to bathe.
My face is frozen in a rictus of both horror and delight. Oh my God.
One agent told of how she had thrived under Debrah's mentorship, making $50,000 in commissions at the age of 22.
What?
Yeah, and this is in 1980.
That's ridiculous.
But when she came into work to pick up her check, she was fired.
Oh.
Turns out part of Debrah's business plan was to stiff her agents.
Oh, Debrah, you can't sniff and stiff. That's no good.
It's almost like I set you up for that.
You did.
Pretty soon, the lawsuits started piling up. And in addition to a messy divorce and custody case over her young son, she was forced to file for bankruptcy.
Oh,
Wah, wah.
that stinks. I'm just going to keep going with that. I'm sorry.
That was in 1987. So not a good year for Debrah.
No.
But things were about to turn around. That was the year she met Robert Durst.
Shut your pie hole.
Scion of one of the biggest names in New York real estate.
Lover of wigs. Florida resident. Oh my God.
Florida? Texas.
Oh, Texas. I thought he went to like,
No,
Florida's
he
where
went to
everyone goes
Texas.
to be weird.
No, he went to Galveston.
Oh, that's right.
And then to Houston.
Oh,
Anyway.
so sorry.
Yeah. All right. Debrah's friend, Nick Chavin, was chatting with Bob at a charity event. Nick Chinga Chavin had met Bob through their mutual friend, Susan Berman. Nick.
Susan Berman?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So Nick was the impresario behind Country Porn, a record which featured songs Asshole from El Paso, Dry Humping in the Back of a 55 Ford, and Cum Stains on the Pillow.
Okay, I now need to lie down.
You
Hold
can't
on.
make this up.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what he was doing. He had this amazing idea where he was going to start this whole genre of music that was kind of punk adjacent, but it was like country music, but it was pornographic country music. That was what he did. It's crazy.
I know, but I love it. I love that. This is like at the dawn of everyone has their own camcorder. He's going into porn music.
Yeah.
An iconoclast.
Okay.
Chavin?
Yeah.
Nick Chavin.
Nick Chinga Chavin. He went as Chinga Chavin. All right.
Okay.
So Susan Berman, who was a journalist at the time, wrote an article about him. And while she was researching the article, they became friends. And as you know, Susan Berman was longtime friends with Bob Durst. So that's how Nick Chavin met Bob Durst.
Yes.
Once Nick and Bob met each other, it was like the bromance of all bromances. These guys were like, we get each other. And they started gallivanting around New York, smoking pot, hanging out at Plato's Retreat.
Oh my God.
I know.
This is
so
heaven
perfect.
on earth. I can't stand
This is a quote from Nick Chavin. Quote, "My instincts are to avoid the cops. Bob and I had a contempt for the law and for society and for rules. That was part of what bonded us together." So, makes sense, right? A couple of guys who just want to flip off the man. I don't know. At a certain point, because country porn wasn't really taking off the way that he had dreamt, Nick needed to have a more dependable source of income. And that's when Bob, who, very close friend, Bob is super friggin' rich, Bob asked Nick if he'd like to handle the advertising for one of Durst's newest properties, a 44-story tower at 1155 Avenue of the Americas. This schmuck he knew, he was like, "Do you want to handle all the advertising? You have absolutely no experience in this at all." And Nick was like, "Yeah."
Okay.
So, quote, this is another quote from Nick. "He gave me my whole career on a platter. Having the Durst organization as your client? They were one of the biggest clients in real estate advertising. They gave us a few $1 million a year." So Nick suddenly has a new career
in advertising.
In advertising. Now, Nick was friends with Bob when Bob's wife, Kathy Durst, went missing in 1982. But Nick never thought Bob had anything to do with it. Another quote from Nick. "I've never abandoned my feelings for Bob, which just drives my wife up the walls. There's never been anybody in my life I felt as deeply about as Bob. I like him enormously. I'm indebted to him. No one's ever gotten as close to my heart and brain as Bob has.
That's a bad sign.
It's so interesting.
Wait, so where's Kathy Bosch?
What?
Where's the real
Debrah?
Debrah, I mean.
Okay, we're coming back.
This is one of my favorite stories ever. It has Durst. It has porn records. It has
Smell
a
tests?
sniff and stiff. What more?
Okay, so Nick's wife, Terry, had worked briefly for Debrah at Bosch Realty.
Oh my God.
Until she just couldn't take it anymore. She friggin' hated Debrah. She remembers, Terry, Nick's wife, remembers the night when Debrah spotted Nick and Terry with the Bob Durst. And Debrah, who's in real estate, recognizes who he is and sidled up for an introduction. Now, Bob and Debrah dated for a while. He was generous with her as he had been with Nick. And remember, Debrah, she just filed for bankruptcy. She just got a divorce. But then she meets Bob. He gave away his money to people he wanted to give his money away to. And Debrah was one of those people. He helped her move into a Fifth Avenue apartment, which was her dream. He set her up in Bridgehampton.
Oh, nice.
They weren't exactly a couple as the years wore on. I don't think they were romantically involved for that long, but they stayed super close friends, and Bob really trusted her. On October 31st, 2000, Robert Durst found out that Westchester County was reinvestigating the disappearance of his wife, Kathy Durst, who had been missing since 1982. So Bob went into hiding in Galveston, Texas, posing as a deaf-mute ugly woman.
Right, which is the best thing that ever happened to true crime.
He came back to New York briefly in December of that year to marry Debrah in a civil ceremony.
Wait, what?
Yeah. They didn't spend their wedding night together. In fact, he left for California the day after he married her to murder Susan Berman. So instead of honeymooning, he was like, see ya, I got to go murder my best friend. There were two women he trusted, one he married and one he killed. Back in Galveston, so after he murders Susan, he goes back to Galveston. And what does he do? He murders and dismembered his neighbor, Morris Black. And he was arrested for that in October 2001, when the body parts started washing up in Galveston Bay. Bizarrely, he was released on $250,000 bail. Think about that for a second. The body parts wash up, and you do realize that when the body parts washed up, he had left like receipts and his ID in like the garbage bags that had the body parts. So he was like, oh, I wonder who murdered this guy. Well, my goodness, it was Bob Durst, because he left like half his apartment in the friggin' garbage bag with the dismembered body parts.
Wait, I actually need a timeout.
It's so nuts. How about this? One of the things that he left behind, he was getting his eyeglasses fixed, the frames for his eyeglasses, and he left like the ticket
to pick him up.
He didn't have it. And so they were like, well, he's not going to go pick up his eyeglasses now, is he? Sure did. He showed up to pick up the eyeglasses. And the eyeglass guy like calls the police. It's like, he's here. He's actually here. Man is like a friggin' billionaire. Buy some new eyeglasses.
Well, I think we've established that he's firmly in the cuckoo category.
It gets so much better. You don't even know.
I'm so happy that this is how my day is beginning, and I can only thank you for this.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So it gets so much better.
I'm not prepared. Go ahead.
So they arrest him, right, when he picks up the glasses. But then, insanely, they let him out on $250,000 bail. So what does he do? He goes on the lam, of course, because that's what he does. It's like, what did you think he was going to do? He was on the lam when you arrested him. Why on earth would you let him out on bail? Crazy. Now, when we first talked about Robert Durst on this podcast, I don't know if you remember, this was like episode 5. Where's Kathy and preps for sale. So that was quite a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
And my engagement question for you was, what was your favorite Robert Durst fun fact? Do you remember what you said?
Of course not. I don't know what I said 10 minutes ago.
You mentioned the fact that like he dressed as a woman.
Oh, an ugly mute woman?
Yes. And not because he had any inclination towards being trans or anything like that. It was just like, no one will ever know it's me.
Right.
But it was like a cheap wig. It was a great idea.
It was zero effort.
But zero effort.
Yeah, no,
like,
it's
people were looking at him like, that's a guy.
In fact, that's Robert
like
Durst.
That's Robert Durst.
Like
in
a house,
wig.
and it's not. He's like a housefrau. Like, here's my schlumpy house dress and my Dacron wig. Yeah,
fooling no one. So
loved it.
I would just like to share with you now, if I may, my favorite Robert Durst fun facts. I'm just going to take a break in this insane friggin' story to share with you some of the things I love.
Okay.
The first was that when he was on the lam after skipping bail, which is where we are in the story right now, he was caught at a Wegmans supermarket in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, after trying to shoplift Band-Aids, a newspaper, and a chicken salad sandwich.
Oh, yeah, the chicken salad
Even though he had $500 in cash in his pocket. They then discovered in his rental car $37,000 in cash, 2 guns, marijuana, Morris Black's driver's license, and, this is important, directions to Gilberte Najimi's home in Connecticut. Do you remember who Gilberte is? She was Kathy Durst's really close friend.
Yes.
Who went full on Nancy Drew and was like, I'm bringing this guy down.
Yes.
Well, Robert Durst had directions to her home when he was caught stealing a chicken salad sandwich.
That is the best chicken salad sandwich that, what's her name again?
Gilberte.
Gilberte could have ever asked for.
Throughout the ensuing trial, that was just one of my fun facts. We're going to come to the next one in a second. Throughout the ensuing trial, Debrah, remember Debrah, handled all of his finances. They're married now. She set up a $47 million trust that was separate from his $4 million estate. The plan was to keep his money clear from any civil case Kathy's family might file. Follow that?
So she broke off $47 million into a trust and left an estate of $4 million.
Yes.
Got it.
As you also know, Bob was acquitted of Morris Black's murder. And you know what? All's good. He's like, he could live anywhere he wanted. He could do whatever he wanted. He's good to go.
I still don't understand how he was acquitted of that murder, but yes, he can. Yes.
Very expensive lawyers.
Yes. Okay.
Helped.
Hmm.
But then he decided to call Andrew Jarecki in 2010 because he wanted Andrew Jarecki to tell his story.
I mean, if anyone has begged to be sent to prison more than Robert Durst, I don't know who it is.
After the 5th episode of the resulting 2015 HBO documentary, The Jinx, aired, now, just so you know, at this point, Bob is living in Houston, and he's just watching the documentary like everybody else is. And every week there's another episode. And after the 5th episode, Bob got super nervous because Jarecki had uncovered evidence that linked Bob to Susan Berman's murder. And that was revealed or hinted at in the 5th episode. So what does Bob do? That brings us to my second favorite Robert Durst fun fact. He went on the lam again. He'd been in Houston, right, watching the Jinx. After the 5th episode, which was the second to last of the series, he drove to New Orleans, where he was arrested in a hotel lobby with, this is good, a .38 caliber revolver, marijuana, because
That's
he
what
never
does.
leaves home without it, his birth certificate and passport, $42,631 in cash, a map of Cuba, and a very expensive custom latex mask. I want you
A custom latex mask. Like a kink mask or
no, I will put on this mask and no one will know that I'm Robert Durst mask. And I will go to Cuba. And they can't get me if I'm in Cuba
like
mask.
the ones where like you pull it over your head and it looked like Jimmy Carter?
Yes.
So like a whole head
Yes.
mask.
Yes.
But not like wobbly and too big on him, like a skin tight murder mask.
Yes.
I can't go on. I want you to do an entire episode on the person who makes murder latex masks because I need to know who that person is.
There's more. After his arrest, video surfaced of Bob hissing on a candy display in a CVS in Houston. As it turns out, he's got a pissing fetish. His brother, Doug, said that he pissed in the waste paper basket at the office of the Durst organization. That was like a big part of the Jinx. And then Bob actually told Andrew Jarecki that he used to piss on the sushi. They had like a family meeting every week, and Bob would piss on the sushi before the family. That means his brothers, his father, his sister. Before they ate the sushi, he found the opportunity to piss on the sushi.
I think this podcast has to end now.
I mean, what the hell do you do with that? He's so messed up.
How do you not know that you're eating piss sushi? What the fuck is that?
I don't know.
I'm not trying to blame the victim.
It sounds like it, but that's okay. Because you just want to know that you could tell the difference.
No.
And you better hope you could tell the difference. But
no,
who knows, Jessica?
That's not it.
Maybe we wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
That's my point, Meg, is I need to know how to tell the difference.
I know.
This is not good news.
It's not.
Bad.
During his trial for the murder of Susan Berman, Debrah, getting back to Debrah, called and visited him regularly. She was in charge of paying his lawyers, but sometimes she just didn't. This is a conversation she and Bob had while he was in jail. So this is Bob speaking. You are perceived as not wanting to spend money on my legal defense because it would decrease the amount in the trust and you would inherit less. That is how you are perceived. Debrah, who perceives me that way? Bob, me. It's so good. Now, as we know, Bob was found guilty of murdering Susan Berman, but he died before his appeal was filed, so the guilty verdict was vacated. Westchester County was planning to finally try him for Kathy's murder based on evidence revealed in the Susan Berman trial, but yeah, he died. Kathy's family is currently filing a civil case against his estate, but Debrah, who inherited everything, is fighting that. Also, she set up the trust to make it extra difficult. So even if they succeed, they only have access to like a little bit of money. Debrah currently buys and sells real estate under her new company, BCB Properties, and splits her time between her Fifth Avenue apartment and her $17 million Bridgehampton home. She has been romantically partnered with Stephen Holm for over 15 years. That's my story. The Jinx Part 2, highly recommended.
I can tell. Can you make me a promise? I need us to have a third person or a third host added to this podcast.
Who?
Robert Durst's chicken salad sandwich. That chicken salad sandwich has to have its own life now. Like it needs to be, it looms so large in my imagination. Why are you looking at Alfie?
There's a weird sound.
Oh, because you know why?
Why?
You know why?
Why?
Because we live in New York City where all that people do is put up scaffolding and rip up the sidewalk. So
That's
what I'm hearing,
I thought it was your stomach
no,
grumbling.
it's a metal plate going across the sidewalk outside. It is not, most certainly, if that's what my stomach sounds like.
I was like, do you need to go?
Yeah. I gotta hit the can. This is the worst ever. No, I am, oh my God, the chicken salad sandwich.
What?
I'm not over the chicken salad sandwich. Sorry.
I think it's so funny that's the fact that you're like glomming onto with all the peeing and the latex mask.
Look, I haven't had a lot of time to assimilate the peeing and the latex mask. The sniff test. I feel like
asshole from El Paso.
I feel like I've been subjected to so many indignities at the hands of people in my work life, like when I was hit in the head with a stapler by the fucking crazy lunatic lawyer who I worked for in 1995.
On purpose?
Yes.
Horrible.
Yes. I mean, she didn't like knock me out. She should have knocked me out. But yeah, no, like, people took horrible liberties. And that same lawyer, yes, it was assault. And everyone in that office was in a state of being like abused and traumatized by this lunatic who, by the way, just to really like show you how often, like, this is why I work for myself. This woman was insane and smelled terrible.
Oh,
and
so
I do know why you need to be careful about smell in the office. And in fact, it was so bad.
Debrah.
I am. And this woman, it was so bad that when we had our weekly, it was probably more frequently than that, but I've downgraded it to weekly office meetings because it was a small office and we would all sit in a conference room together. It's so much worse. Let's layer it, shall we? It was BO to begin with. And this is a woman who was wearing like Escada suits. Like she had money. Okay. But why would she have such bad BO? Maybe because she didn't want to bathe too frequently because she had to work around her colostomy bag.
Oh, Jessica.
I'm not joking you.
Oh, so it's not her fault.
It is her fault. Absolutely. Are you insane? There is an absolute, you bathe that is why you bathe extra. For God's sakes. So when the minute that you said she was checking for hygiene, I'm like, oh girl, because we would have arguments about who would have to sit near her but as though it made a difference. As though it made it. Once that conference room door was closed, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
no.
Let's hear it for HR.
Yeah, let's hear it for things changing.
Yeah.
Damn it. I'm now having a flashback. I'm having an olfactory flashback. So let's talk about something else.
Okay, cool.
Shall we?
Yes. What do you have for me?
Did you ever learn anything from television?
I'm sure I did. I mean,
what's something that really, if I say to you, hey Meg, what's the number one thing you feel you've gleaned from a television show or from just anything that was broadcast on the TV?
Well, you know I love a good documentary.
Okay, great. Lay it on. Well, other than Durst, what's your most recent thing that you've learned?
I just watched this documentary about, I love a good cult documentary.
I know you do.
And there's one right now about these TikTok dancers.
Tell me everything.
Oh my God, it's awful. There's like this guy who has a religion.
Oh, I saw the crying father in the promo.
Yeah, watch it. I mean, and I'm going to make the kids watch it too. Like, basically, he preys on young artists. He's like, I will make you famous and rich. And in the meantime, you will lose your mind because you will be part of my cult and I will completely control you. And of course, there's sex involved. It's disgusting. Yeah, it's awful. Brainwashed these young dancers.
Good God.
Yeah, horrible.
Don't try to be famous. That's the takeaway. God damn it. There are too many people who will prey on you. Just go to school, get a job in real estate, which is normal.
Well, I don't think that
I know that's not
the
the
moral
takeaway.
to the story is don't be an artist.
I'm teasing. I'm absolutely
but
kidding.
Yeah, I mean, the brain is squishy and certain people are more vulnerable than others. And that's a big fat bummer.
It is a big fat bummer. Well, education through the television is a long-standing tradition, as we well know, because PBS is the best. However, in the 80s, there is a very special kind of education that you could get through the television in the form of PSAs.
Okay.
And in the 1980s, the one that really took off, even though, and I'll give you a little history, it started in 1968. The phrase that rings in so many people's minds is,
do you know where your children are?
Yes.
Ha!
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Yeah. It's kind of sad that people had to be reminded to check on
I
their
will
kids.
tell you what's so fascinating about it. So the way I was actually going to begin this segment was, what did Andy Warhol, Carol O'Connor, Cyndi Lauper, Kathleen Battle, Elaine of Elaine's Restaurant, and oh my God, there were just Walt Frazier.
I think Grace Jones.
Yes, Grace Jones, absolutely. They all did this PSA. And what I loved about it was, like, the way that we remember it is that it was like really grim.
Yeah.
And the delivery.
Like, if you do check and your kids aren't home, I'm really
then what?
sorry.
Like, then what happens? Well, the way that it began, even though it was the luminaries of the 80s that made it truly memorable as like a star-studded event, it started in 1968 when Channel 5 was WNYW.
So this is local
news. This is absolutely not Fox News. This is Channel 5 local news. And it was 1968, and there was a lot of social turmoil going on. And Mel Epstein, who is a young, basically ad guy working at WNYW, was like, all right, let's do a PSA, but it's kind of upbeat. Let's do something that's kind of, like has a good vibe to it with all of this nastiness going on. And bizarrely, the phrase they chose was, do you know where your children are? It wasn't as though they're missing. It was supposed to remind them, like, hey, love your kid. Like, you're awesome kids. Like, think of your kids. It was so bananas that was the intent. And when I saw this little documentary on YouTube about it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? I watched that over and over again because I was like, how? How is that? And Mel, who I think is still alive, is this jovial fella who's like, oh, it was so upbeat. We were just like, love your kids. And I was like, well, it took a dark turn, Mel, because then I watched all of these clips of all of these famous people from the 70s, 80s, but in the 80s, it really took off, as I said. And this is what it sounded like. I'm now going to be any single one of them. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Seriously, I remember imagining, like, because at 10 p.m., any time of year, it's dark outside. So if your children are not home, they are somewhere outside where it's really dark.
Yes.
So it's terrifying.
Yes. So also entertaining is some of these people who were doing these PSAs were not actors, such as Andy Warhol and Elaine from Elaine's. And so I will now do a dramatic impersonation of these two people.
Get wrapped up in all
She doesn't know. She or didn't. She had no idea. And you can tell from the clip. So Andy Warhol is looking, like his usual totally addled self. He didn't give a great presentation. And as we all know, his whole shtick with his wackadoodle wig and all of that was kind of like, let me do the observation. You can look at me, but don't talk to me. Well, there's a reason, because he sounded like this. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Now, Elaine, exactly.
Because I do.
Exactly. They're in my tinfoil lined loft. Elaine did not know why she was there and could not remember the whole line. So she goes like this. It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? The eyes actually flicker back and forth. There's that pause. And watching it is so stressful because you're like, Elaine, are you going to get it out? What's going to happen? I don't know. So that lived
As though
on.
anybody would know what Elaine looked like in order for that to be impactful. Like, oh my God, that's Elaine from Elaine's.
Exactly. And yes, exactly. And who were the parents who they were trying,
Right.
Like the people who wanted to see and be seen? Like, was that who was really going to worry about where their children were? I'm out at Elaine's. I don't know where the fuck they are. It's fine. Maybe they're here with me. So that was where I began with this. And I was like, I am in love with the local New York PSA.
Mm-hmm.
So then I found a few more that I just want to share with you. And one of the things that's really evident from watching these clips is, what's gone? A real New York accent.
Oh, I know. It is a bummer.
And a real New York accent being taken for granted, as that's how we speak. So there's a whole bevy of PSAs. And one of them that I would like to do for you, because I know you love it when I do accents, is reminding your parents to turn the water off because there's a water shortage. And it goes a little something like this. There's a water shortage. When your mother is brushing her teeth, turn off the water.
Why is it the parents who are wasting water?
That's the great thing. So that's a little girl. And the little boy is, turn off water for New York. Save water. And what I love is that whatever the entity is that's doing these PSAs are like, we believe the children of the future. They will harass their parents into doing things. So it's like, if we teach the children, they will lead the way.
Right.
No. Any harried parent who's brushing her teeth, getting her kids ready for school, and her kid's like, Ma, turn off the water. You're wasting water while you're brushing your teeth. No, that kid is grounded. That is it. Goodbye. So then that brought me to a few other New York ads, and we can put these on the Instagram. I will send you the links.
Please do.
But a lot of these ads, because they're so iconic and they're so New York, they actually wind up getting used in raps and songs. And a great example of that is, I'm Tom Carvel. Get Fudgy the Whale for a whale of a dad. Or Cookie Puss. Cookie Puss is out of this world. And Cookie Puss was then sampled by the Beastie Boys for their song Cookie Puss as true New Yorkers. So these are all odes to the New York accent that is, pretty much.
And local TV.
So then I started thinking, what up with the 80s and PSAs? Because it was a booming time for PSAs. And I realized it all boiled down to Nancy Reagan. And what she did was she started a frenzy of don't do drugs. And don't do drugs took a lot of different forms that everyone will remember once they see them. So let me just do a few. One is middle-aged man standing in a kitchen over a stove
with an egg,
with a hot pan.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love is how belligerent it is. Do I have to tell you again? This is drugs. Egg crack into the pan, sizzle, takes the hot pan, shoves it in the camera and goes, "This is your brain on drugs. Got it?" It's like, yes, I do.
It worked.
I got it. Michael Jordan, don't do drugs thanks to McDonald's. So there's a whole bevy of ads that are what happens to you if you do drugs. My favorite one is a very grim, it's like a police procedural. So you're in a dark room with a shadowy figure sitting in the middle of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly a spotlight is on this shadowy figure. It's Pee Wee Herman.
Oh, no.
It's Paul Rubens in full Pee Wee Herman garb, talking like this, but delivering a completely serious message with no jokes, kids. This is crack cocaine.
No.
Crack cocaine is very, very bad. No one knows what's really in it. And if you do it, you could die. One time you take it, and you're dead. So don't do crack.
Seriously?
And then Partnership for Drug-Free America. Yes, that's how crazy it went.
Pee-wee.
It was anyone they could shove in front of the camera with crack is whack.
Just say no.
Just say no. We're not even going to get into the Mr. T scenarios. Oh, and other ones from the 80s. Do you know what the most successful don't drink and drive ad campaign ever? Oh, no, excuse me. Car safety ad campaign.
So car safety means buckle your seatbelt?
Yes.
No, I do not know the most successful.
Do you know, do the names Larry and Vince ring a bell?
No.
They will. Crash test dummies.
Oh.
Don't be a dummy.
Okay.
Buckle your seatbelt. And because of that campaign, seatbelt buckling is now at 90.4%.
I mean, why not do it?
Seriously, you'd think. Although by the same token, you'd think don't drink and drive. Another fantastic 80s PSA for don't do drugs, don't drink, whatever, is a whole bunch of kids, of course, wearing varsity jackets. And they were at a party. It's like, hey, let's drink. And someone's kissing someone else. They're getting in the car and their one friend is like, and they've all been drinking. And their one friend, the fateful line, "It's just a few beers." And then you see his hand shaky, trying to get the key in the ignition. And I thought, kids these days will be like, what is that? You just press a button and the car goes. So now the entire message is lost. Oh, I don't have a key. I'm fine. My Tesla will drive itself. So shaky, shaky. The next thing you know, everyone in the car is a skeleton.
Oh my God.
Wearing the outfits that they had been wearing. And then it says,
not subtle.
Don't drink and drive. Your friends will thank you. And then it's two hands shaking across a black screen, and one is an actual hand and the other one is a skeleton.
Holy crap.
That grips the other hand, right? And I was like, grim. And I was like, well, who is responsible for these? Who is making these? And if you notice at the bottom of the corner of every single one of these is a little square logo with the word ad in it.
Okay.
And it is...
Yeah, I can picture it.
Ad Council of America.
Okay.
Now, what is the Ad Council, you ask?
I do.
I asked. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I looked it up. The three major advertising gurus of the 1940s, Leo Burnett, Young, and Rubicam, got together right during World War II. And they were like, how can we make a social difference? What can we do? And in the 40s, they started putting out ads early for anything that would be, and it was a nonprofit, anything that would benefit Americans. So I will give you a brief timeline. They started with America at War needs women at work.
True.
That was the beginning of the ad council. 1944, Smokey the Bear.
Ah,
Don't start forest fires.
yeah.
1945, join the American Red Cross.
Okay. These are all good things.
Yes. 1958, fight polio. Join the March of Dimes.
Yes.
Yes,
I think we can all get behind all
we can.
of this.
In 1972, do you remember this one? A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Yes.
United Negro College Fund, which, by the way, in the 1980s, there was a panhandler right near Bloomingdale's.
I remember this.
Yes, and he was really funny. And he would say, as he shook his cup, give to the United Negro Pastrami Sandwich Fund. So these ad council ads, they were ubiquitous. Like
Yeah.
everybody knew the slogans.
What did George Bush? He misquoted it. A
Oh, no.
mind is
a thing to waste?
I can't remember what it was. I'll look it up.
In 1978, McGruff, take a bite out of crime. But then the 80s came. Friends don't let friends drive drunk. And that one was, do you remember? It was two glass beer steins
I do.
coming at each other and crashing. 1985 was Vince and Larry, the crash test dummies. Now,
These guys are good at what they do.
they're really good at what they do. And interestingly, in 1988, they were clearly at odds with the Reagan administration because this ad had been in the works for a while. In 1988, it launched. It is an all-white background with black giant type at the top and at the bottom and in the center. And it's a black and white image. In the center, a condom. And
Okay.
it says, using it won't kill you. Not using it might. Help stop AIDS. Use a condom. First time an unwrapped condom was ever shown as part of advertising.
Dan Quayle.
Oh, yes, of course it was
wasn't-
Dan Quayle, that fucking
It was Dan
idiot.
Quayle. It wasn't George Bush. It was Dan Quayle. And he said, what a waste it is to lose one's mind. Or not to have a mind is being very wasteful. How true that is.
Yeah,
That was good.
that's not so good, Dan. Yeah, he was a fucking moron.
He was a moron. And do you remember when Bush chose him to be his vice presidential running mate? Everyone was like, oh, women are going to vote for him because he's so handsome.
Yeah, oh my God, yes.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're that vapid? What the fuck?
We're stupid. He has a nice
Yeah.
haircut. I like his haircut. Okay. So then, not to be outdone by the ad council, let's not forget that programming in the 80s and in the 70s went full on helping kids. And the after school special on ABC TV really took off. And interestingly, frequently the location of where bad things happened was New York City.
Of course.
So they really kicked things off beautifully in 1973 with Beau Bridges as a divorced dad. This is from the kid's perspective of a divorce. My dad lives in a downtown hotel.
Oh, what's the kid supposed to do about that?
He has the indignity of visiting his dad in a downtown hotel. Like, how depressing is that? I thought at first it was like, my dad is a smack. He's on smack. He's homeless. So he's in an SRO.
Divorce.
No, he's divorced and living in an efficiency apartment. Oh my God. Poor Beau Bridges. And the kid who played his son later showed up in The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek II. Some other fun ones, Willie Ames, who is the victim of bullying in Psst, Hammerman is after you.
Who's Hammerman?
His bully.
Oh my God.
Coming to get him. Dinky Hawker Shoots Smack, which was based on a book of the same title.
What? Shoots smack? They said that?
They said that. That was the title of the book.
Good Lord.
And it was a 1972 book and a 1979 film. In 1979, a Puerto Rican boy from Florida moves to New York City and befriends an Irish person and starts playing music in a bar called New York City Too Far from Tampa Blues. I think that would be New York City real far from Tampa. Hooray. Not blues,
So
but
it wasn't a
okay.
happy story
I
coming
don't
to New
think
York?
so. No.
Okay.
And quickly following up that, NBC weighed in with reading, writing, and reefer.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so now we're getting into the 80s. Now we're getting into the drug years. But my favorite title of all is Jennifer Jason Leigh, starring with Mrs. C herself, Marion Ross of Happy Days. Have you ever been ashamed of your parents?
Why is she ashamed? Does her mother shoot smack?
I think her mother is unhinged.
Okay.
She's
Crazy
a
mother.
cuckoo, cachuchu, and dating.
Ooh.
Yep.
Mrs. C.
Yep. And now in 1985, a new actor, a hottie on the scene, is brought into the world of telling kids how to live life better. Viggo Mortensen, in 1985, stars in High School Narc, which I believe is 21.
I was like,
Street.
that's 21 Jump Street.
But that's how Viggo Mortensen found his way into acting. And in 1987, and we can call our friends Alex and Guy on this one, The Day My Kid Went Punk, because that's terrifying because someone gets a mohawk haircut.
I think I saw that when I was researching something else. Yeah, no, you don't want your kid to go punk.
Did you notice
according to this after school special?
No, did you notice that the dad who is wringing his hands in despair is played by Doc of the Love Boat?
I would recognize Doc from the Love Boat, yes.
And my all-time favorite from 1988, starring Joey Travolta and a star-studded cast, including Michael Jackson as himself, Kathy Rigby as herself, and Richard Roundtree of Shaft fame as himself, the ABC After School special, Daddy Can't Read.
Oh, no.
Yes. So that, I think, dovetails with Have You Ever Been Ashamed of Your Parents?
Okay. Oh, no.
So the 80s were a really major time of let's get the kids through the TV. Thanks to networks and the Ad Council, there was no shortage of messaging that you and I and our ilk were exposed to. And why? Now, I've been seeing a lot of this on the social media, and people have been really seemingly very proud of this. But the new phrase I'm seeing a lot is, "Don't mess with us. Gen X is feral." So apparently the only thing that kept us from being raccoons in the street was the Ad Council and ABC TV.
And the tie-in for today?
If we could put these two together, it would be reading, writing, real estate, and reefer.